Hi everyone, welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Forum's weekend handicapping preview program. My name is Matt Bernier. Thanks for joining us here. Coming up this week on Out of the Gate, we have a park-centric edition of the show. As we can see, you've got the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby for 3-year-old males that'll be coming up. We're going to go over the Cotillion for the 3-year-old fillies. Nicole Russo also has a beautiful little 2-year-old race at Belmont Park on the grass. We'll see some interesting pedigrees in there. Jonathan Kinchin, he's going to focus on parks with a pick 3 play, and Timeform US is Craig Milkowski. He also is going to use the Pennsylvania Derby as the Timeform US spotlight play for this week. And we'll wrap things up, hopefully with some winners and best bets. As we always do here on Out of the Gate, let's kick things off with our horses to watch. As we always do here on Out of the Gate, we start things off with Horse Watch. We welcome in NYRA analyst Mike Beer. Mike, one of your horse watches for this week, or your horse to watch, is from NYRA.
Yeah, of course, at Belmont Park on Saturday. I'm not too excited about this horse watch. I did struggle to find any, real horses who caught my attention this weekend, but here's one of them. Culture Carrier was making his career debut on Saturday in a turf race, mile and 16th at Belmont on the inner turf. Of course, he looked like a horse to me who just needed his first race, Matt. He was very green early. He's almost lost contact with his field through the stretch. But once he leveled off with a run out of the turn here, you'll just see him just start making up ground at the end of this race, almost like he just started figuring things out really late in the game. He's passing a bunch of horses at the end, gaining ground all the way down to the finish, and then he just continued on past the wire and went right by this field. He just looked to me like a horse needed his first race, will probably benefit from it wherever he shows up next, probably take a little bit of a step forward and maybe even get it done in his second career start.
Certainly a promising enough career debut for your horse to watch. My horse to watch, we've seen him a number of times. We're going to go back to the Woodbine Mile this past Saturday afternoon. Long on value. You see him in the white cap at the top of the lane. He's stymied in behind a wall of horses. And unfortunately for Joel Rosario, it's nothing he did wrong. I think this is just bad racing luck. And he finally does get angled out when it's far too late. You see world approval on the front end. He's already gone for home. This horse long on value is going to kick, and it's also worth noting he recently has been campaigned at shorter distances, sprinting on turf. This is his first stretch out back to a mile, or a route of ground anyway, in quite some time. He finishes with a rush. I don't know if he's going to end up in the Breeders' Cup because currently, as is stated, I believe he is not nominated, but if they choose to go there, they have options. They can try a race like the mile, or they can try to turn him back to the turf sprint, because we know at Del Mar, the turf sprint is at 5 furlongs. So a little bit unfortunate for long on value there. He's one, we know his career, we know his story, but he's certainly one that you maybe want to tuck into your horse watch for wherever it is that he shows up next. Let's get into some real handicapping with the main event for this coming Saturday. It's the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby. Saturday DRF formulator race of the day is the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby from Parks. Let's take a look at the field. As always, you can go over to the Race of the Day page and check out some free formulator past performances as we go through this race as well. And we also have the full in-depth nuts and bolts analysis over on the Race of the Day page as well. Mike, we got to start off with the horse that they all need to beat in here. That's West Coast for Bob Baffert. Baffert and Smith team up again. They win everything, it seems. In West Coast, it looks like they've got another good one on the heels of victory in the Travers.
Yeah, he's a horse who's really found himself lately in particular. He just, going from strength to strength right now for Baffert, and they ship him in here for a very big $1 million race for 3-year-olds. This was, the kind of division, the 3-year-old division after the Triple Crown was over, sort of waiting for somebody to step up and take control. And to West Coast's credit, he stepped up and taken control.
Yeah, the Travers was really kind of a breakthrough performance. We're going to take a look at that replay right now. We knew that he was talented. We've already seen him in New York. He ran very well in the Easy Goer on Belmont Stakes Day. Then he came back and he ran well in the Los Alamitos Derby, but he hadn't done anything like this. And I think we've got to give credit to Mike Smith again, taking the initiative, saying, no pace, we're going to go on with this thing.
Yeah, very good ride. He had an inside post in this race, and Smith just decided to go on with it. He went right to the front, and he controlled this thing basically throughout. We picked up that replay sort of upper stretch right before we picked it up. IRAP and other horses really improved, took a pretty big run at this horse. He got up to about even terms off the quarter pole, but West Coast was having none of that. He just left that horse behind. 108 Beyer speed figure. He's way the horse to beat.
IRAP's going to have to find a way to make up a couple of lengths on him here on Saturday afternoon. Arguably the most polarizing horse in the race is Irish Warcry. We're going to take a look at one of his best races to date. That's the Belmont Stakes, where he ran so well to Tappert. Tappert eventually ran him down and wore him down late in the stretch. Irish Warcry, Mike, I know you're not his biggest fan, but he has that sort of profile where you don't know what you're going to get. He's the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde, but when he's good, he's at least relatively competitive in here.
Yeah, it's not like he doesn't have, 2 or 3 different races that would give him a pretty big look in the Pennsylvania Derby. I thought he ran just fine here in the Belmont Stakes. It almost felt to me like it was just a matter of distance. Tapper got it a little bit better than he did, but he still ran well. We'll see if he can show up on Saturday and not only run his best race, but really prove once and for all that he's one of the better 3-year-olds in the country. Because I got to be honest with you, Matt, right now, I'm not so sure that he is.
You and I are both acknowledging that West Coast strictly the horse to beat in this spot, but we're going to go to Chad Brown down on the rail. We're going to give Timeline another look. The Haskell, draw a line through it for a number of reasons, but this horse, we know he's got some talent.
Yeah, I don't think things just went that great for him in the Haskell. A little trouble at the start. Maybe just got him a little bit cranked up after he had the trouble, and I think he just wound up getting the wrong trip and ride in that race for whatever that's worth. He needs to bounce back with a better performance here. Maybe he can run something like this Pegasus. The last time that he won a race right before that Haskell Invitational, I mean, I thought he ran really, really well in that race. He's got to step up his game in the face of a horse like West Coast, but I think he's pretty talented.
Yeah, and as we're going to take a look here at the replay of the Pegasus, that when Timeline was out there, and again, he was beating inferior company. At the end of the day, good horses do this to mediocre fields. They're supposed to put them away. The Haskell, as we may mention, there were a couple things that didn't go his way. It'll be interesting to see what kind of trip from the inside Javier Castellano is able to work out. You've got a speed drawn just to his outside, but it still feels like if there is any horse that could possibly jump up and kind of turn the tables on West Coast, possibly it's the lightly raced Timeline for Chad Brown. I think he's going to get bet in here, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of price we do decide or ultimately get on this horse, but I think he is one. Mike and I both agree that maybe he's the one that can turn the tables here on West Coast. Nicole Russo has her pedigree pick, and it's going to be a 2-year-old turf race at Belmont Park Saturday afternoon. Let's go to that segment.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo here for Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at some of the well-bred runners, including some interesting debut starters in Saturday's 7th race at Belmont. This is a maiden special for 2-year-olds going a mile on the turf. I'm going to start right toward the inside with Up the Ante, who is one of those first-time starters. He's by Smart Strike, who's a very good all-purpose sire. He's got Grade 1 winners on turf, dirt, going routes, running sprints. Up the Ante is a half to Aristocratic, a stakes winner in Grade 3 placed on dirt. So at first glance, you might wonder about the placing, but their dam is a half to Dominus, who's a Grade 2 winner on both turf and dirt. Very impressive winner of the Bernard Baruch on the Saratoga turf. Dominus is by Smart Strike, so Up the Ante bred on that same cross. It's also the family of multiple Grade 1 winning turf mare Honey Rider. So definitely turf background there. And I like this one at the mile distance or even a little bit farther next time out. Should definitely want a route of ground, I think. Another debut starter, War Chest, is by Warfront, a very good turf sire, obviously very popular in Europe. He's going to be the first starter out of a mare who was a dirt runner, multiple graded stakes winner Wine Princess, who won the Fall City at Churchill and the Monmouth Oaks. Wine Princess is out of another dirt mare in Horse of the Year, Azeri. But Azeri's by Jade Hunter, and out of a mare who was a group stakes winner in Australia. Azeri herself now a fairly successful broodmare in Japan. Certainly some international appeal and turf breeding back in the family, and crossing that with Warfront definitely magnifies that. Another one who should definitely like the distance here, Warfront, a very good sire of precocious horses, miler types. I like this one first out a bit. Dynabuck is a first-time starter by a good turf sire, Lemon Drop Kid, out of a Dynaformer mare, which definitely adds stamina. And he's a half-brother to Sadler's Joy, who you're watching here win the Grade 1 Sword Dancer over the summer at Saratoga. A very exciting horse. He's on the upswing. A lot of European class back in the pedigree. Dynabuck, another first-time starter to keep an eye on here. And really quick, I want you to pay attention to one of the previous starters in this race, Thunder Mesa. He's by Sky Mesa, out of a graded stakes placed mare on turf. He's half to a German Group 3 winner, getting on turf for the first time after 3 career starts. I think this is going to be his preferred surface and that he should move forward. Thanks for tuning in to Out of the Gate, and we'll be back with more on this week's episode after these messages.
You asked, we listened. DRF Plus has more flexible subscription options. Use DRF Plus Basic for exclusive news and analysis, including our DRF Live real-time news feed. Or go deeper with DRF Pro and unlock buyers, closer looks, picks, and reports, including the DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off the plan of your choice. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about the DRF Plus subscription plans at drf.com/plus.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's continue on with the handicapping portion of the program. Let's move on to another Grade 1 down at Parks. Saturday afternoon, the Grade 1 Cotillion for 3-year-old fillies. Let's take a look at that field. As always, head on over to video.drf.com for the expanded stakes previews. You've got a big full field in here. There's going to be a couple scratches because we've got cross-entered horses, but all eyes, Mike, are going to be on Abel Tasman, the Kentucky Oaks winner, the Acorn winner, the Coaching Club American Oaks winner. Her list is very, very long, and it's very, very prestigious. She is the leader in the clubhouse for the 3-year-old fillies, and she is the horse to beat in the Cotillion.
Yeah, way the horse to beat in the Cotillion, that's for sure. She's been very good with winning 3 straight Grade 1 races. She'll try for a 4th here for Baffert. He ships in with 2, potentially very, very tough favorites to beat in the 2 big races on Saturday. Abel Tasman, believe it or not, maybe even tougher to beat than West Coast is in the Parks Derby.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what we get as far as pace is concerned in this race. But I tell you what, the good thing about Abel Tasman, she has a little bit of versatility, as we're going to take a look now and see. The Coaching Club American Oaks was her most recent start. And keep in mind, this was the race that she made that big brush going on to the backside because there was no pace signed up.
Yeah, they started to back the pace down on the backstretch, and Mike Smith was just having none of that. He sent her into an early run. He got right up with the pace and stayed up there the entire way. That was the first really smart thing he did. Here's the second really smart thing he does in the race, because you can see Alate's trying to come through on the inside, and Smith is just keeping it very, very tight on her. I think it made the difference at the end of the day here. He beat a very good filly there, and Alate, who came right back to win the Alabama. If Abel Tasman, just comes back and runs that race on Saturday, she's going to be very hard to beat.
And for you, she is the horse to play in here. Not necessarily to play, but she is the pick.
Yeah, she is the pick in here. I just don't like the alternatives all that much. To me right now, she's just better than these horses.
She is the horse to beat. I'm not going to try to deny that or argue against that, but I'm going to take a small stab against with It Tis Well, a horse that we saw most recently in the Alabama up at Saratoga. We're going to take a look at that replay right now. She was actually the filly that was cutting out the fractions throughout, and for one reason or another, the pace was relatively fast. She wasn't being pushed, but consider they're going 10 furlongs. She had just come off of a pretty tough race, all things considered, down in the Delaware Oaks, where she somehow just dug in and found a way to get the job done. I didn't think this was a poor effort from her, and I really think that cut back in distance that we're going to get. Remember, this was at 10 furlongs. They're going to go 8.5 Saturday afternoon. She has tactical speed. I'm hopeful that that's going to be the advantage that It Tis Well needs to get over the hump and possibly pull a little bit of an upset over Abel Tasman. No denying that Abel Tasman is the horse to beat. It Tis Well, hopefully I can get a decent number on her, maybe 7-2 or 4-1. Maybe that tactical speed is the thing that can get her over the hump. I'm going to go with her in the Grade 1 Cotillion. Let's move north to Belmont Park for the Grade 2 Kelso. The Grade 2 Kelso at Belmont Park is one of 2 graded stakes races Saturday afternoon. Let's take a look at that field. It's not a huge field here in the Kelso, but there is a pretty big name, a couple big names. The one most notably, though, is Sharp As Teca for Jorge Navarro. He is a very, very fast horse, Mike Beer. He's a very talented horse, and he is very likely controlling speed in the Kelso.
Yeah, it feels like there's Sharp As Teca's got a lot going for him here in the Kelso. Only 5 other horses lining up against him. I don't think any one of them has the kind of early speed this horse has. He's just supposed to go right to the front in here. He's going to be pretty tough to run down.
He's controlling speed, but the most interesting thing is it seems like recently they have made a concerted effort to get him to be able to relax a little bit early on and not be so breakneck as we saw in the Monmouth Cup most recently, where he sat off of a target early on and he took over. And I know this is an entirely different ballgame at Monmouth, but this is called burying a field.
Yeah, that's right there is what's known as written out in a race. In case you were wondering what it looks like, that's what it is. He just buried this field. And you're right, they'll let him settle a little bit off the pace. I wonder if that's because this was a 2-turn race. I feel like they've probably got designs on the 2-turn dirt mile at the Breeders' Cup at the end of the year. I want to make sure that he can do it. Getting back to the 1-turn mile, though, on Saturday, that even, to me, feels like a benefit for this. I think he's a way better horse around 1 turn. If he runs basically any one of his last 4 or 5 races, he's a handful in here.
We always talk about it. When you give the best horse likely the best trip, they're going to make you pay. We'll find out if that all pans out Saturday. Likely the second choice in the race and one of the most talented one-turn horses we have here on the East Coast is Divining Rod for Arnaud Delacour. It was nice to see, first things first, it's nice to see that he's stringing a couple of races together because unfortunately for him, he's been very, very sort of off to injure. But at this point, he's run together a couple of races and his most recent race was in the Forego up at Saratoga.
Yeah, and he didn't run poorly in the Forego at all. He is in a pretty tough position here, chasing Dreyfong on the lead. The pace wasn't that fast. This horse was just the entire race trying to get to Dreyfong. He can't do it. He's just no match for that horse. You can just sort of pan your eyes out to the outside there. The three closing wider. That's Tom's Ready. He's also coming back in this race. These are two very good horses, but they're both sort of in a similar situation here almost where you feel like they might be left to chase a horse who might be a little bit better than them in the Kelso.
Yeah, and I hate to say it like that, but isn't there a real scenario, as much as we respect Divining Rod, that we're going to have a carbon copy of what we just saw in the Forego Saturday in the Kelso, where instead of Dreyfong, it's Sharp Azteca cutting out the fractions?
Yeah, he might just be in a position where he has to chase again. I mean, the good thing, at least in Divining Rod's favor, is he does have a little bit of tactical speed. He does not have to be that far away, so maybe he's within range and he can turn this thing into a horse race through the stretch. He's good enough, I think, to give Sharp Azteca a race, but, trips and pace scenario could make all the difference here.
Now, I don't want to speak for you, but I think I know which way you're leaning in here. Sharp Azteca is just too much horse in here.
Yeah, I just had too tough a time going against him. Only 5 other horses in here, and it looks like they can't keep him from the front. I had too tough a time going against him.
I think he's the controlling speed, and I think from a talent standpoint, he's just simply the best horse in this race. I think Sharp Azteca gets the job done in the Grade 2 Kelso, and hopefully on to bigger and better things if you're a fan of the horse like I am, may come the first Friday or Saturday in November when they go out to Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Jonathan Kinchin, he's taking a look at Parks on their big day. He has a pick 3 play coming up. And Craig Milkowski from Timeform with the Timeform US Spotlight play. He's going to take a look at the Pennsylvania Derby, the main event up at Parks on Saturday. Let's go to those segments.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK Play of the Day. Last week, hopefully you were smarter than I was and you used the all button in the last leg of the Super High 5 at Woodbine. Unfortunately, I wasn't. Nonetheless, it's nice to see the ball almost go through the hoop, and hopefully we can get it through the hoop this week. We're going to start, we're going to do the Parks pick 3 leading into the Pennsylvania Derby. One of my favorite things to do is play pick 3s and pick 4s and multi-race bets that lead into my strong opinion. In the Pennsylvania Derby, I have a pretty strong opinion. One of the reasons I like to do that is I feel like you get a little bit of extra value when you can hook it up in a multi-race situation. A lot of times the horses that I like are overbet. That's just the type of horse that I identify, horses that are coming off of trips or coming off of situations. The rest of the world sees it as well. And those are the horses that I typically fall on. And the horse that I've picked in the Pennsylvania Derby, I think is one of those horses. So we're going to start in race 9, the Gallant Bob. It's for 3-year-olds sprinting. I'm going to use 3 horses in this spot. I'm going to use the entry of 1, Petrov and Colefront. Petrov ran really well at Saratoga, going 7/8. Kind of back to sprinting, cutting back a little bit further here. If he was an individual wagering proposition, I'm not sure I would latch on to him, but I'm happy enough to have him because I do want the 1A Colefront. Coming out of the Alan Jerkins, the premier sprint race for 3-year-olds. He ran well in that race. Unfortunately, he lost a lot of ground throughout it, and I think that he'll show up and run a little bit better this time. American Pastime with Kent DeSormo up for Bob Hess, who shows up out here on the East Coast. This horse was impressive in his last race at Del Mar, beating an odds-on, kind of a popular buzz horse, Lord Simba, an odds-on horse for Bob Baffert. American Pastime was super impressive in that spot. I look for him to run well here as well. And then Excitations, a horse that I think maybe the last time was the time you really wanted him, but he was closing into a track that saw a lot of speed do well. So I'm going to give him another shot. I'm just trying to get alive to the horse that I have in the Pennsylvania Derby. So in the first leg, I'm going to use the 1, the 5, and the 7. In the second leg, the Cotillion, the Grade 1 Cotillion for 3-year-old fillies. Look, I wanted to be against Abel Tasman. I really, really did. And to be honest, I kind of am against her, but I'm still going to include her in this bet. And because she's going to be such a short price favorite, and I'm using her equally with the other horses that I'm going to pick in here, I feel better about that situation. I feel like I'm just kind of saving a little bit with her, but my stronger opinion is that this isn't going to be the time you want her. She didn't show up for the Alabama, which I think was a negative sign. She's running at 1 mile and a 16th, and yes, she's won at 1 mile before. I think that her better distances are going to be longer, so I think she's going to be a little bit the spot, but she's talented enough that I'm going to give her another shot. The other two horses that I'm going to use are the 5, It Is Well for Jerry Hollendorfer, and the 10, Salty. Salty's race 2 back was super impressive. She kind of came off of a little bit of a trip. I think she's going to run better at a spot at a distance that I think is probably a little bit more friendly to her than the 1.25 miles that she saw last time, and maybe even the 1.8 miles she saw 2 times before that. And then, so I'm going to use those horses in that spot. And then in the last leg in the Pennsylvania Derby, I love IRAP in this spot. I think West Coast is going to be extremely overbet over what was a favorable trip, favorable pace scenario, favorable distance, favorable surface, and a favorable bias. And I think that IRAP is one that could really excel, cutting back in distance a little bit. I think he's one of the fastest 3-year-olds that we have out there, and I think he'll show it on Saturday. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi, this is Craig Mulkowski at Timeform US for this week's Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to take a look at the Grade 1 $1 million Pennsylvania Derby being run at Parks. It's a dirt race at 1 1/8 miles for 3-year-olds. And really, along with the Oklahoma Derby, which is run on Sunday, it's the last chance before the Breeders' Cup for 3-year-olds to compete against their own age group. They'll have to move up against the bigger horses, older horses. One thing to note, I didn't put this on the graphic, but the race rating for the Pennsylvania Derby going in on Timeform US scale is a 127. So I kind of use that as a benchmark as what we're going to look for. The Timeform US pace projector kind of predicts where the horses are supposed to be early in a route race like the Pennsylvania Derby. It's the half-mile call. And we're going to look at a few of the horses that are in the front of the pace projector first. Shown as the leader is number 1, Timeline. And a quick look at his past performances, you can see why. His last race was really quick. He had some trouble at the start. He was bumped and banged around. And he still kind of rushed up. He made the lead by a head. But the important thing to note here is the pace figures he did it in. It's one thing to have a tough break and rush up to the lead when the pace is slow, but these horses were motoring. The race wound up setting up for a big closer, a couple closers in there. So the 139 pace was really tough on him. This is what I kind of call it's a hidden nightmare trip when you rush up into a fast pace, make the lead, and there's other horses you're dueling with. So I think Timeline is a horse that you really have to keep an eye on. If he gets clear, he could be really dangerous here. The next horse shown in the pace projector is number 2, Outplay, Todd Pletcher horse. And while he's been running well, shows high speed, he's a horse who generally needs the lead to win, and I don't think he's going to get it here. And also, I mentioned that 127 race rating. You can see he's been running at a much lower class of horses. He ran in a listed stake at Saratoga, which had a 116. And all his races, nothing's near the 127. So while I expect he will try to challenge for the lead, he's definitely a bit in over his head here, and I don't really consider him a contender. Another kind of a name horse that's shown next in the picture is Irish Warcry, who draws the 8 post here. And he's a solid horse. He won the Grade 2 Wood Memorial back in April. He went into the Derby. I believe he went off the second choice that day. And he had another one of those nightmare trips I talk about where he was just wide the whole way through a really fast pace. It was a sloppy track. He just didn't show up that day. He bounced back nicely, almost won the Belmont, led deep into the stretch before being run down by Taprit. And then he's kind of a disappointment in the Haskell. He went off at only 2-1. He was part of that hot pace. So maybe there's a little bit of an excuse here, but once again, he's going to have it a little tough on the front end with Timeline in here. So Irish Warcry, one of the lower price horses, is one I'm going to be against. Next up is West Coast. He's probably the leader of this division right now. The Triple Crown races have kind of fallen by the wayside. None of the horses have done much. And West Coast has really seized the mantle of this group. He's a horse. He started out slow. He looked like he had some talent. But ever since he went to Belmont on Belmont Stakes Day, he's just exploded. He's won 3 straight easily by open lengths. In his last race, the 133, in the Travers, he ran a 133 time figure, which is the best of his age group by quite a bit. He's clearly the horse to beat here. One interesting thing to note is he did go wire to wire in the Travers. He hadn't really ever done that, hadn't shown much early speed, but he was sent right to the front, similar to his stablemate Arrogate the year before, who just not really a front runner, but if the circumstances present itself, he's willing to take it. But I don't believe he's going to be a horse on the lead here. He'll be tracking, and he's the horse to beat, no doubt. Next up, we look at IRAP, who was also in that same Travers. He kind of was touring the smaller mid-level tracks, winning the Ohio Derby, winning the Indiana Derby. But those are races that prove strong. You see the runner-up, Gervin, in the Ohio Derby, came back to win the Grade 1 Haskell. Colonel's Dark Temper, who was a runner-up in the Indiana Derby, came right back and won the West Virginia Derby at Mountaineer Park. And then IRAP's another who had a bit of a tough trip. In the Travers, he didn't have a good break. He was wide all the way around. He looked like he might get second, but he got interfered with a little bit by Gunnevera, but not enough to affect the order of change, so he was left third. But just a good, solid horse. His speed figures are getting better all the time, and he's definitely a contender in here. One last horse I want to talk about is Game Over. And the reason you have to note, I don't want to get too much into Jorge Navarro, the trainer. He's been in the news enough lately, but you have to respect his horses. They're running big. You can see in the West Virginia Derby that I mentioned earlier, he ran a good second, and his speed figure improved 9 points in his first try for Navarro. So at a long price, he's one I would definitely keep on my tickets. Okay, so that's it for this week's Out of the Gate for Timeform US. Now back to Matt in the studio.
Time to take a look at our best bets here on Out of the Gate. Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, going to stay right at home. Graded stakes race, though, early in the card.
Yeah, race number 3. I got to go race early on the card, race number 3, because it's only a 5-horse field in the Noble Damsel, grade 3. I'm making this best bet contingent on the morning line for this race being pretty close to correct. They've made number 1 Celestine the 4th choice in a 5-horse field. And if she goes off 4th choice in this race, then I'm just going to bet her and hope that she can get back to one of her good races. Her most recent start in the Grade 1 Just a Game was not good. I didn't think she ran well in that race. But if she bounces back to one of her better races, I just think she's better than these horses and she will win. We'll throw up the replay of her first start of the year here. This is her first start off the layoff. First start as a 5-year-old for Christophe Clement. This is the good Celestine. She got to the front here. She had a horse to her outside there, Catch a Glimpse pushing her along the entire way. And she just stayed on and powered away from that field through the stretch. I like this performance from her. She came back. She won again in her next start. She did not run well in her last start, so she's a little bit of an all or nothing for me on Saturday. Either she's going to get back to the Celestine of old and she is going to win, or else she just can't run anymore and she just won't be any good again. But if she's the old Celestine, I think she'll beat this field. And if she's anything like her morning line price, I'm betting her.
Yeah, simply put, if she runs her best race, she's going to win. She's just better than those horses. We'll find out. You know, this is a sad thing, Mike, that I can't remember the last best bet I actually had that won. And I'm hopeful that Charlestown is going to be kind to me in the Charlestown Oaks, the nightcap on Saturday night. I'm going to go to Money Spunt. Money Spunt is a horse going east for Doug O'Neill, and we're going to take a look at her most recent start. This was in the Torrey Pines at Del Mar, and she's coming up on the outside right now. And really, the big story here was the big flop from Paradise Woods, who was 1-5. And you see her, she's toiling in the back right now. But the horse that's on the front, Zapper Cat's going to get a little tired, start drifting out, bumps again with my horse Money Spunt on the outside. Eventually, you're going to see, okay, she doesn't actually hit the wire first, but via disqualification, she is put up. I think Doug O'Neill has done a tremendous job. I like the way that he has gotten her improved ever since they claimed her a few starts back for $32,000. And the big thing for me, Charlestown, you got to be making moves on the turn. That's a really important thing. It's 7 furlongs and it's 2 turns. And I just love the way that she moved on the far turn there in the Torrey Pines. I think that bodes well for her. She's 4-1 on the morning line. I wouldn't want anything less than that, especially because it's Charlestown, and unless they do it, you don't really know if they're going to be able to handle the racetrack in that configuration. But I'm going to go with Money Spunt to hopefully get me out of this just miserable rut with these best bets here on Out of the Gate. That is going to do it here for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.